Come for the bread, stay for the politics. I'm Ben Walsh, and this is Let Them Eat Bread. Welcome back to Let Them Eat Bread. I know it's been a long time since we have had a broadcast. Thanks for sticking around. Happy New Year. I know we were supposed to film last week, but I fell ill. I did get tested, and I officially have/had coronavirus, which really sucks, but hey, we're here. We're making bread this week together. For those of you who wrote in and asked if I was doing okay, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It was pretty rough for a couple of days, but I feel great now, and I'm ready to make a show, and I have a show prepared for you, so I'm very excited for that. Speaking of which, new year, new recipe. We are making shokupan, a Japanese fluffy white bread, fluffy white milk bread we'll be making today. We are going to do things a little differently since this recipe is made almost entirely in a standing mixer. I'll be moving the camera over to my standing mixer so that you can take a look inside and see what's going on. We have a special ingredient today that required a little bit of prep. This is our yudane. This is a water and flour mixture that is help our bread stay extra fluffy and last a little longer. If you don't yet have your yudane made, pause this video, wait. Take the instructions that I put on Facebook. They were published on Friday, January 14th. You'll see them on the Let Them Eat Bread Facebook page about how you make this particular part of it. Also, in the description below, there will be instructions on how to make the yudane. But the yudane has to be made beforehand. You have to make it the night before. So if you don't yet have it, you didn't make it the night before, I'm afraid you can't make this bread with me today. But don't worry about it. Just make your yudane and then play this video tomorrow when you are ready to make your bread. Okay, guys, I'm so excited. I have a bunch of stories. I have good news, bad news, old news, new news to talk to you about today. So let's get started.
We are going to start with 150 milliliters of room temperature milk, just pouring that in there. Next up is our butter at room temperature. We're going to do 10 grams of unsalted butter, and just making sure we get all of that on there. Next up is going to be our sugar. We have 15 grams of white sugar. After that is going to be our instant yeast. Guys, using instant yeast, there's 3 grams of that. Next up is our yudane. So you have to break this up into very small pieces. So you're just seeing that I'm making sure that every little piece of this is broken up so that we have a nice consistent amount of yudane. This helps us with mixing it all together when we get there. After that, we have our bread flour. For this, we have 200 grams of bread flour for this recipe. And finally, we have our salt. Now I'm using kosher salt. We've got 5 grams of salt here. Now we're going to combine this on the lowest speed on our standing mixer. This is going to be 1 or stir. It really just depends on what your stand mixer says. After that, we're going to speed it up to 5 or 6. Okay, guys, we're going to do this for 20 whole minutes. It's going to be a long time. Just make sure you're holding on to your stand mixer so it doesn't fall off the table. Now we're ready. We're just putting this together. It is still going to be sticky, guys, so you need to work quickly with your hands so you don't get the dough actively on your hands. You can see I've sped up the video, but I'm actually moving fairly quickly as well. So just making sure that you don't get it sticking. Now we're going to put it in an oiled bowl. You can see I'm just putting the tiniest bit of oil in this bowl here as I lubricate it as we get it ready for rising our bread. You really don't need a ton of oil here, guys. I'm thinking like a teaspoon is probably okay, and I'm using a fairly large bowl. So now we're just going to use our flexible bench scraper to get the dough off. It is still sticky. You can see that I'm trying to shove the dough underneath itself to get a nice top ball. It's going to be really hard because my hands aren't oiled. I recommend oiling your hands or watering your hands to do this process. After that, we are going to put it in the oiled bowl and we're going to cover it with some plastic wrap, and we are going to throw that somewhere nice and cozy warm to get it rising. We're going to throw a towel over that just to make sure that we get the heat in. So I'm using my oven, and I'll explain why in just a moment.
All right, so our bread is warming. Now, it says to do this at about 30 degrees Celsius or 86 degrees Fahrenheit. So because it's in the winter months, I have put my oven on the lowest setting for a little bit. The oven is now off, but I do have the bread in there with the door open. So hopefully that gives a little bit of extra heat. If your house is really warm, then great, perfect. Don't worry about making it warmer, but a warming oven or some other way to warm your bread a little extra seems to be good for this recipe, especially since you saw the way that the bread was still a little sticky. So I think it's going to need a warm temperature to get lots of rise in there. So you know what time it is. It is time for our politics segment. If you are not staying for our politics segment, just set your timer for an hour and I will see you then. If not, if you are staying, we're going to throw up the whiteboard and see what we are going to talk about today. So let's do it.
All right, so I am going to be I'm making a double recipe, which is why I am buttering 2 tins. This recipe I'm going to post below only calls for 1, so feel free to only butter 1 tin. Also using an 8x4, even though I'm using a 9x5. All right, so the big reveal on our dough. It looks great. We are going to just get that back on the table here, and we're going to knead the air out of it real quick. All right, so now that we've done a little bit of kneading, we're going to try and just incorporate the rest of that oil. You'll see a tiny oily residue at the top of your dough. Don't worry about this. It will fold in really nicely and neatly. Okay, the dough will still be a little sticky, but that is okay. It's expected. We're just making sure this is a top ball so that we can weigh it out and get the right measurements. All right, so we are going to divide our dough into 4 balls, and then we are going to cover these with a wet paper towel and let them rise for 20 minutes, okay? After these are done rising, they are a little bigger. We're going to keep our wet cloth because we're going to still need them, and we are going to engage in this process where we actually flatten these out. So using a rolling pin, you're going to flatten these out to 8 inches by 6 inches approximately. I'm having a kind of a tough time with it, just kind of ignore my struggle here. But essentially, you're going to have to do this for all of them. So just pay attention and make sure that it's as squarular as possible. Remember, 6 inches by 8 inches. Okay, I'm just measuring that there. And then carefully, slowly, and without getting air in between, you're going to fold in the long side so that you end up with a rectangle that's about 8 inches by 4 inches. Okay. And then once you do that, you're going to go to the long end and roll that up as tightly as possible, making sure that no air creeps in as you push this in. So you really want to push down tight with your fingers. All right, and you're done. We're going to do that with all 4 of these, and then we're going to take our 2 doughs and we're going to have them face each other. We're then covering them again with our wet cloth, and we're going to let these rise for 30 whole minutes before we do anything else with them. All right, so this is optional step, but if you want to, and I'm going to do it, I'm going to paint my doughs here with some egg. This is going to give them a nice look when we're done. You'll see on the closing how it you can see the egg on these as we go. So it's important to note that because I'm using a 9x5, these didn't rise up as much as they probably should have, which is totally okay. You should probably use an 8x4 for this. This will allow for the doughs to rise into each other and raise up. You actually want the rising on these to be such that when your rising is finished, the dough is actually topped out and is level with the top of the container. You can see that mine are not like this, but that's okay. I recognized going in that I was using a container that was not the right size, so that just is what it's going to be. Meanwhile, you want your oven preheating to 365 degrees Fahrenheit or 185 degrees Celsius, and we're going to cook these for 25 to 30 minutes when we get done there. All right, we're just plopping these in the oven for the amount of time specified. You don't need to turn them. Don't worry about that. All right, guys, that is it for this week. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. I will see you guys next week with a different recipe. Thanks for watching this video, guys. If you liked it, throw a like on it, share with your friends, and subscribe for more of our content. You can also find all of our videos and clips on youtube.com. Just search Let Them Eat Bread, and you'll find all of our content. All right, guys, see you next time. Bye for now.